Over 20 years ago, on a bright sunny day in New York, the world changed forever. 4 planes that took off that morning were never to come back. A day of unimaginable tragedy, heroism, and consequences that continue to shape our lives today. This is the September 11th attacks.
United 93, you're here, Cleveland Center.
A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way.
What came down though? What came down?
We crashed. The other Trade Center's down.
Very sketchy details reaching us here at Sky Centre. Important enough to bring to you though. At this
Getting reports in now that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center.
2 planes have crashed into the World Trade Center in New York.
There have been a series of terrorist attacks in the United States.
We can now confirm a second plane has crashed into the second tower of the World Trade Center.
To understand the tragic events of 9/11, we must look at the complex history that preceded it. The roots of the attacks trace back to the US involvement in the Middle East during the late 20th century. During the Cold War, the United States sought influence in the Middle East to counter Soviet expansion and protect vital oil interests. In particular, the US and allies were involved in the Soviet-Afghan War in 1988, supporting a group of Islamic fighters. Further US involvement with Israel and in the Gulf War caused further distaste towards the US by some Middle Eastern countries. A small minority took it to the extreme. Osama bin Laden viewed these policies as an occupation of sacred lands and vowed to get revenge on the United States. Formed in 1988, Al-Qaeda emerged from the chaos of the Soviet-Afghan War. Initially, its focus was on fighting perceived enemy of Islam. Over time, its leaders shifted their sights to the United States. Al-Qaeda would take it to the extreme. Terrorist measures to show the world its hatred for the United States. In 1993, a truck bomb detonated in the parking garage of the World Trade Center, killing 6 and injuring over 1,000. The attack was a warning of what was to come. Subsequent attacks included the 1998 US Embassy bombings in East Africa and the 2000 bombing of the USS Cole. Despite mounting evidence of Al-Qaeda's capabilities, the full scale of its ambition remained underestimated. By the late 1990s, Osama bin Laden and his lieutenants had devised the most ambitious plan yet, an attack designed not just to kill, but to strike at the very heart of America's economic, military, and political power. In early 2000, Muhammad Atta, the ringleader, and 3 other members who had studied in Germany of what became known as the Hamburg Cell, began intensive preparation for the attack. They traveled to Afghanistan to finalize plans with bin Laden himself. In June 2000, Muhammad Atta and Marwan al-Shahi arrived in Newark, New Jersey on tourist visas. From there, they traveled to Florida, where they would enroll in flight schools to learn how to pilot large commercial aircraft. The other hijackers would arrive from April 2001 and begin flight training and final preparations. On the morning of September the 11th, Atta arrived at Portland Airport at 5:40 a.m. and boarded a flight to Boston Logan International Airport. At Boston, he was selected for secondary screening for explosive, but was able to board American Airlines Flight 11 to Los Angeles. At 7:59 a.m., Flight 11 took off from Boston with 92 passengers and crew. Just 15 minutes later, the hijackers reportedly stabbed the pilot to death, and Muhammad Atta, the ringleader, took control of the cockpit. Air traffic control lost contact with the aircraft, and it had quietly changed course towards New York. The hijackers, in an error in operating the aircraft, accidentally broadcasted a passenger announcement to air traffic control.
We have some planes, just stay quiet and you'll be okay. We're returning to the airport.
15 Southwest of Bono going to Hampton.
And who's trying to call me here? American 11, are you trying to call?
Nobody move. Everything will be okay. If you try to make any move, you'll danger yourself and the airplane. Just stay quiet.
Some flight attendants attempted to make calls to inform the world about the situation. Betty Ong, a flight attendant on Flight 11, stayed on the phone for over 20 minutes to provide crucial updates of the hijacking.
Our number 1 has been staffed and our 5 has been staffed. Can anybody get up to the cockpit? Can anybody get up to the cockpit? We can't even get into the cockpit. We don't know who's up there.
At 8:46 a.m., Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center, impacting between the 93rd and 99th floors. Hundreds died instantly. Anyone above the impact zone was trapped and no one survived. Initially, it was unclear what happened. Many believed it was an accident and it was a light aircraft that crashed into the North Tower. Evacuation began immediately, and fortunately, most people below the impact zone made it out alive. Meanwhile, in the South Tower, some panicked people began evacuating. Despite this, though, the Port Authority, responsible for the building, ordered people to return to their desks as it was not apparent that the North Tower posed any danger to the South Tower. Just 17 minutes after the first impact, United Airlines Flight 175, another Boeing 767 bound for Los Angeles, hit the South Tower. Millions watched in horror as it was broadcasted on live TV.
From the front angle before, but not from this angle.
At 8:50 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77, leaving Washington Dulles Airport, was seized by 5 hijackers. The hijackers turned it around and crashed it into the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m. Final plane, United Airlines Flight 93, departed from Newark at 8:42 a.m. It too was hijacked by 9:28 a.m. On United Flight 93, passengers learnt about the attacks via phone calls to loved ones. Knowing their plane was part of the plot, they made a heroic decision to fight back. In an extraordinary act of courage, they stormed the cockpit, forcing the hijackers to crash the plane into a field in Pennsylvania rather than its intended target, believed to be either the US Capitol or the White House. At 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 went down near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. In New York, the South Tower collapsed first, followed shortly by the North Tower. Many trapped above the impact zone were unable to escape. Many died of smoke inhalation, others when the towers collapsed, and some died from jumping from the towers. The attacks killed nearly 3,000 people and injured thousands more, but their impact went far beyond the immediate tragedy. First responders faced unimaginable dangers, risking their lives to save others. Over 300 firefighters died that day. Toxic dust and debris in the aftermath would lead to long-term health issues for many, with thousands dying in the following years from cancers and other related diseases. Thousands of families were forever changed by the loss of loved ones, community across the globe mourned, and the world entered a new era of heightened security and vigilance. September the 11th, 2001 was not just a moment in history. It was a turning point. It reshaped the world's understanding of terrorism, security, and resilience. The following decade would see the US engage in a war on terror, leading to many more deaths and injuries in its involvement in the Middle East. On May the 2nd, 2011, the United States succeeded in a special operation to kill Osama bin Laden, marking what is perceived by many as justice to those who fell on September the 11th.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this story, smash those like and subscribe buttons. The full episode can be found in the description, alongside our weekly newsletter and the sources that we used. Bye.